Lots of people experience this. And in the studies that don't say 80%, they might say 30 to 50, those studies do point out that individuals from marginalized populations, generally underrepresented populations, experience it at higher levels. Oh, went the wrong way. Oh, good. Oh, no. You can hear me, but you don't get any slides. Even famous people. This is actually a really short list. If you Google famous people that have talked about publicly feeling like an imposter, Tina Fey, Neil Gaiman, the author, Neil Armstrong, there's actually a really interesting story about them sitting at an event for astronauts and other scientists, very impressive people. And Neil Armstrong tells Neil Gaiman, I don't know why I'm here. Neil Gaiman's like, because you're Neil Armstrong. You go walk on the moon. He said, and Neil Gaiman says, Neil Armstrong, the astronaut, said, I just went where I was told. Okay, yeah, that's right. The research also tells us that, in the media, we hear a lot, it's a little bit geared towards female identifying individuals that mostly experience the imposter phenomenon, but it is absolutely across all gender identities. And it's also across all industries and hierarchies within industries. So custodian at a public school, CEO of a Fortune 500 company. It spans just everything. It originally came from these two ladies. Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes were psychologists in the 70s. The imposter phenomenon first came out in 1978, kind of a long time ago. And their original paper, Imposter Phenomenon. The word syndrome is not included anywhere in the study. It is also important to note the study was completed on high-achieving white women, as it only. There was zero diversity in the population of the study. But it is not a syndrome. It is not something we need to fix. It is not something that is wrong with you. It's definitely not a disorder or a disease. It is, as Clance and Imes, the doctors defined, it is a failure to internalize your success despite the existence of external objective indicators. Okay, so this is not someone telling you, great job. There is objective proof that whatever the situation is, whoever you are, that you are pretty good and you still can't internalize that. So that's what the imposter phenomenon is. But it, in fact, is just a normal part of our brain chemistry. It's part of the human experience. And it happens to live in a part of the cycle of flow. So does anybody know the flow state? Maybe lots of heads nodding. Experience being in the flow, in the zone. Got your game fit. Now we got a yes to it. Does anybody want to share a time they felt like they were really deep in flow? Meditation. Writing. That's a big one. Sports. Yep.
Spreadsheets.
We're going to talk about that.
For me, sometimes it's speaking.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
During trials, I'm an attorney. I turn into a whole different person.
Yes.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
Fulfilling.
Okay. So what you all shared about at the time you felt like you were in flow, that was in fact actually only the third stage of a 4-stage cycle. So flow is not an on or off switch. It has 4 stages. And we start with struggle. And that is what it sounds like. The first stage is hard. You might not really like to do it. It might be rehearsal if you're an actor, or maybe if you're rehearsing a closing argument. It might be the research before you're writing on a project. It might be practice if it's some kind of sports. But whatever it is, it's hard work. And it's not always that enjoyable. And I'm just realizing I totally skipped over actually defining flow. So let's do that real quick. So flow itself, what you guys were talking about, your experiences. There's the major researcher of flow for many, many years and did absolutely the most prolific works on the topic is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. I spelled his name right today in a message to someone someone without looking for the first time ever. I was very impressed, but I'm not going to try to do it out loud. If you search Father of Flow, you will find him, and that will tell you how to spell it. But Mihai Csikszentmihalyi wrote tons on this. It's where the field of positive psychology came from, all of his work, that sort of thing. But it's essentially the state of optimal experience. And so peak performance, but also peak experience. So it's this optimal state of you like what you're doing, you are really enjoying what you're doing, you're fully focused, you are very, very good at it. That's part of the objective, one of the objective indicators of flow is that you are very, very good at that. Let's do a skill balance and all stuff. So, but again, that is all. Did I have the laser pointer? That is all in that third stage of flow, but we have to get there, right? So that's that first stage of struggle. Well, I'm about to go really overboard with the laser pointer, you guys. Sorry. So struggle, phase one. During this phase, we get two main types of neurochemicals that our brain gifts us. And I'm emphasizing the word gifts. So one of them, and listen, Canva told me this is cortisol and adrenaline.
Okay.
But it's Canva.
I just go on the website for CBDs and shit.
Oh yeah, yeah. So, well, there's one when we talk about anandamide. I'll remember that. Yeah. So during the struggle phase, we get cortisol and adrenaline. Again, I'm not a neuroscientist or a chemist, so who knows what these really are. But some point is that probably when you hear the word cortisol, you think, well, that's stress. I don't want to be stressed and I don't want belly fat. That's what cortisol. I feel like that's all that media talks about when it talks about cortisol anymore. It's like, get too much and you'll have belly fat. But at their true purpose, cortisol and adrenaline are motivation. That is their function in our brain. And when we get the right doses, that's what it is. So that's why cortisol is the whole morning thing, because you wouldn't get out of bed without it. So during struggle, our brain, even though it's hard and we might not love it, our brain is giving us these two really nice neurochemicals that are motivating us like, it's okay, you can do it, you can do it. So we know that this is called struggle and that we don't really like it and it's hard, but we know that flow feels easy and that we do like it. So how do we get there? Stage two, release. That is kind of a twofold word. So one is that this one, there, I don't need the laser pointer, guys, but it's really fun. This might be nitric oxide. But what our brain gives us during the release phase is nitric oxide. And this little burst of nitric oxide physiologically flushes the stress hormones out of our brain and our body. Okay? So the way we get that nitric oxide is by releasing ourselves from whatever it was we were doing during struggle. So it was hard and we're in it, and then might have gotten to a point where you're frustrated. So the nice step about the release phase, if you're intentional about it, is that you're taking yourself away from it on purpose. And this whole neurobiological concept is exactly what's behind when people say, well, I was in the shower and I had the best idea of my life. And that happens enough that there are waterproof Post-it notes now that you can buy and put in your shower just in case you get that next big idea. And this is why. And then, there's other ways to release yourself because you might be able to go take a shower in the middle of the day at work. So a very common recommendation is taking a walk, right? But I generally, and maybe this is a neurodivergent thing, so you can tell me if you agree, but I find that when I'm doing something hard or I'm frustrated and then I take a walk, I'm just taking a frustrated walk. So
I require a certain amount of whining to occur between the struggle.
Listen, that's a good, I should add that. I'm going to add that to my slide.
The amount of whining.
That's a good one. So what I like to add that is a really key piece to get from struggle to release, because release happens kind of fast, right? Yes.
Did you say anxiety is part of struggle?
You might get anxious during struggle. I think it depends on what you're doing.
Okay.
Yeah, but it could be, especially if maybe you get a little too much adrenaline against like your skill of what's going on. I could see that happening for sure. So again, going from struggle, which takes a while, release is usually pretty quick. And then we do want to get into flow. a nice way to ensure that you get the really good release phase is to add in some play. And this is for two reasons. One is that more than just take a walk, and you're just taking a frustrated walk, you're truly switching your brain to some completely new activity. And you don't want to go do something else hard. You don't want to step into the struggle phase for a different project. So adding some play in, and we'll talk about what all that means for each of us in just a moment too. And then the second fold that play is amazing is that this is where we start to see these lovely neurochemicals. And Stephen Kotler, Kotler, is seems to be the main guy researching flow and all this currently. And he compares all of these very natural, very beneficial neurochemicals to street drugs. And CJ, the anandamide, he says, gives us the same effect as THC, so those cannabinoids in there. So if you wanted to look that up, and I forget which one is heroin, but his whole point is if you do meth, heroin, THC, and crack cocaine all at once, you'll die. But if you're just getting into flow, it's really great. So do it the natural way. So we're going to play, and then we're going to move into flow. So dopamine, serotonin, those two, I think most people know, those are our joy hormones. That's what gives us a lot of that pleasure. Anandamide is a sort of like a happiness and joy booster, that kind of thing. Norepinephrine is one that's directly related to reducing stress, regulating our reactions to stress. Endorphins, that runner's high, but whatever, if you're not a runner, whatever your thing is, that gives you that high. And then BDNF is brain-derived neurotropic factors. And those, plus these other ones, but those mainly are the ones that boost our neuroplasticity. So neurobrain plasticity, plastic, the ability to malleable. So we want our brains to be plastic because we want our brains to learn new things, to grow, to continue to develop. And these are the chemicals, especially BDNF, that allow us to do that even as we age. Just like kind of an outdated thing that we were told for a really long time, that once we were kind of in our mid-20s, that was it. Good luck with your brain, because it's not going to get any better from here. So that's not true. We can still do this, and we can do it through play. So the other coolest part about flow, and this is my very fancy neuroanatomy. See the walnut? That's the walnut. I call it the amygdala. You don't really have a walnut in your brain. I don't remember what it is. Anyway, during flow, we experience transient hypofrontality. Good word. Transient meaning temporary, short-lived. Hypo meaning low. Frontality referring to our prefrontal cortex. So our prefrontal cortex lives here-ish behind our forehead, somewhere around there. Doesn't really have a volume though. But once we're in flow, we've gotten that nice dose of those really great neurochemicals that we just looked at. They're on my shirt too. You forget what they are. This prefrontal cortex and the amygdala temporarily completely slow down their activity. So the prefrontal cortex controls our executive function, in theory, right?
I don't think my
Okay. Sometimes well, sometimes not. It depends on your neurodivergence. But the prefrontal cortex is like the CEO of our brain. It should be making the hard decisions, reminding us that there are rules for things and being rigid, telling us not to walk out in front of the street, in front of a car, that sort of thing. But it also tends to, no, don't try that. That's too risky. And it can really get a bit loud at times with its rigidity and its strictness. And then the amygdala is a place where a lot of like negative self-talk lives. So we hear that's the part that's telling us don't try that. You can't do that. What do you mean? So during flow, those two areas of our brain are turned down, almost off. So we don't have all of that rule, rigidity, etc. in the way. At the same time that we're getting all these really cool chemicals, which also boost creativity, communication, collaboration, lateral thinking, which is like seeing one idea that's kind of unrelated, and then our prefrontal cortex would be like, no, that's apples and oranges, don't you dare. We turn the prefrontal cortex down, these neurochemicals are going, but fruit, not that simple, but like really cool things. So that's flow, stage 3. But there's 4 stages, because the flow is this peak experience. We made it. to the top of whatever it was. It doesn't have to be a mountain. It can be the top of your spreadsheet, right, Jervis? It can be the top of your closing argument, whatever it is. You kicked ass. It was amazing. You loved doing it. It was objectively, neurobiologically incredible. But we can't stay there, right? There's no grocery store up there. We have to come down. So this is stage 4 recovery. We talked about Stephen Kotler comparing our really awesome neurochemicals to street drugs. It's that when we're coming down from them, they went way up, stage 3, and then they have to come down. So this is like a detox. It's a safe detox, but that's what's happening. Our feeling good starts to go away. Our creativity maybe gets limited. And those nasty, yes, necessary, 2 areas of our brain get real loud again. So then we're looking back at what it was we created through a suddenly very critical lens and saying, oh, what? Who did that? It wasn't me. I don't know. You mentioned when you were public speaking. Did you say public speaking?
So being in trial.
Did you say public speaking too? Yeah. So maybe anybody else experience public speaking? Yeah. And then afterwards you go, oh, I don't know what I said. You're right. Yeah. Like people, I don't know. So this is part of that, especially if you get into flow. So it is my argument that this is where the imposter phenomenon lives, is this recovery phase, completely normal part of brain chemistry, but society has taught us, okay, well, you better do it better, do it again, do it better, hustle harder, be better, do it again, go, 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 go. When in fact, what we need during this stage is rest and play. Society does not allow for that. So thinking about the areas of our brain that were, in flow, kind of overworked because we were cranking it out, like really doing shit, we need to let it rest. So actual sleep and relaxation meditation. Those are 2 areas that the research shows that is the right kind of rest for the brain after the flow state, that 3rd stage. And then also my argument is, again, to get back those neurochemicals because they can drop like below baseline. So to get those up to at least here, we don't want to jump right back up again. Our brain can't handle it. Probably our body not either. But we want to get it at least back to baseline. And so play is what brings about all those neurochemicals again. So play on a nice low-level play, an easy play, playfulness won't jump us up to the peak again, but it'll give us some, and it'll be nice. And then we have rested, and then we have played, and then we're prepared to maybe go back into the struggle with a new project. But if we skip the rest and play during this recovery phase and step right back into struggle, the struggle is going to be a lot harder. The release is going to be a lot harder. And then flow, we start to see it happening less and less. And then we end up just living in that imposter phenomenon. Mm-hmm.
Is that why we used to have recess?
Yes. Adults should have recess. It's exactly why children have recess. Yes. Like exactly. So we just want to get back in here. Rest and play. There we go. That's what it is. Okay. So what does play mean for you? Because you all are going, okay, I get it, but what's play? I am an adult. We don't get recess. When am I supposed to play? What am I supposed to do for play? So everybody
Forcibly enforces recess at least once a day.
I know it does.
Hey,
I love it. I love it. Okay, so everybody have a piece of paper. Take a piece of paper, please. And I have just now turned into your fairy godmother. Okay. And I'm granting you a magic hour. And some of your brains are immediately going, yeah. We'll go to the post office and then the gym and then switch over that load of laundry. No, none of that allowed in my magic hour. My magic hour is a full-on universal Saved by the Bell, Zach Morris timeout. It's only us in the world. Everything else is frozen. Your kids are fine. Your pets are fine. Your plants have been watered. You already worked out today. You just had an excellent lunch. We did just have an excellent lunch. So that part's real. You are nicely satisfied. And I have given you a full extra hour. And my super cool magic wand can transport you anywhere with any type of equipment you might need. So we are going to share these, not with our names, but I want you to write down what you would do with that hour. One thing, I have had people write full-on lists before. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes because I already see that this is hard. This is not an easy exercise. So if you're thinking, why can't I think of anything? Because that's the normal default. And then when you're done, fold it into a paper airplane. And there are no lines on your paper because I want you to make the plane as how your mind thinks it should be made. There's no right or wrong for how to make your plane. Usually I do one myself, but I ran out of paper. It's okay. Can I borrow any more?
Now I'll give it away because we have lines on it.
That's okay.
Okay, right.
Oh, yeah.
You need one more?
Yeah. So if you do want to make a paper airplane and you're truly stuck, just down the middle, corners back. And if you're like, I don't want to make a plane, it's too hard. You know what else is fun? Paper balls. So just ball it. That is also an option. All right. And once you've got your paper airplane folded, if we can stand up and just sort of face each other.
Try not to poke anybody in the eye.
Try not to poke anybody in the eye, or just watch your eyes. Because these planes will be erect.
I like the optimism that this will fly.
You can also make a ball. I think that is going to fly. That looks awesome. All right. Stand up and sort of face each other when you're ready. Okay. So what we're going to do, and I'm going to go 3, 2, 1. We're going to launch them, and you're going to find somebody else. Okay. Yeah, that's fun. All right. 3, 2, 1, go. Woo! That was pretty good. That's amazing, actually. Oh, walk with you here. All right, there you go. All right. Okay, you can go back to your seat. I just want you to read and take a second to reflect if you think whatever's written on that piece of paper is something that you would have chosen. So my first question is always, did anybody get something that they wrote? They were like, this is exactly the same as mine.
Mine's pretty close.
So that's only happened twice in any of my workshops, and it's been hiking both times because we're in Colorado, right? Did anyone pick one up and they're like, absolutely not? Hard no, I would never.
I mean, a little bit, yeah.
Okay. Do you want to read it, or you don't have to?
15 minutes at a cruise ship buffet, which sounds awful. But then sleeping on a shade on the whole deck, that sounds great.
Love it.
Mine was sleeping in a hammock, so like.
There you go.
We're on
There you go.
here.
Excellent. So all of that is to point out our first characteristic of play is that it's personal. So this cool thing that I made up on Canva is my definition of play, because play is very hard to define. If you Google it, you'll find all sorts of answers, and they usually say something about kids or dogs. And that's not fair to us, and it does not encompass what play truly is. So I've used research from a number of psychologists, scientists. The Lego Foundation has a really impressive third-party organization that does a lot of research on play. And so I've taken all of them and kind of conglomerated what I believe play is. So first thing is that it's personal. The second thing is that it brings us joy. We talked about that because we know we get that just straight up with the dopamine, the serotonin, maybe oxytocin. But the interesting thing is that joy is also pretty personal itself. So play is also beneficial, and we're going to talk about those benefits on the very next slide. So hold tight for that. Some aspect of play needs to be optional. So in my work as a consultant, a lot of what I do with teams is helping them understand how to play at work. So there is a lot of work that's obviously not optional. So the overall activity might be required, but the player, the person participating, needs to have some level of at least a feeling of control over some aspect of the activity. Play needs to be seemingly purposeless. So some of you may have had down things that have a really cool outcome. You know, a hike, you're going to get a really good view. And some like good cardiovascular activity, right? So there may be good outcomes. Mine is skiing. When I go skiing, I'm not thinking, oh, my heart is getting so strong right now. Like, that's not why I'm skiing. So it needs to be seemingly purposeless, which is closely related to intrinsically motivating. So you can't be doing it for external validation or external reward. Again, you might get an external reward if it is sports. Somebody said soccer, you might win, but that can't be why you're doing it. Actively engaging, that does not have to be physically active, can be cognitively active. And some aspect of it needs to be iterative. So you have to be able to change it at least a little bit each time you do it. And then skill balance, we mentioned this a little bit when we were talking about the flow state. Flow and play are very closely linked. And skill balance just means it can't be too easy, you'll get bored. It can't be too hard, you'll get frustrated. Now, if you can tell that this is in italics, it's because if you get all 9 in an activity, ta-da, you played, good job. And if you can add a socially interactive piece, if you want to, then it'll like level up those benefits because there's some other neurochemicals that might get involved. So here's our benefits. Very short list. Absolutely not extensive. Exhaustive. This is exhaustive. That's the word I wanted. This list is not exhaustive. But these are some, I don't know, my favorites. These are the best ones. Maybe, who knows? Different for everybody, right? It's personal. But we get cognitive benefits, physical benefits, and mental benefits. So the physical ones are kind of obvious. If you're doing a physical activity, then you're probably increasing your mobility and improving your cardiovascular function. But even on a lower level, some of those neurochemicals that we get when we're in play, especially at the flow level of play, are directly related to like a reduction of the perception of pain, not in a dangerous way, but just like you can play through the pain a little bit, something, or you just might not have noticed, like maybe that should have hurt. And they also increase strength. So even if you're not doing something that's like overtly physically active as the play, the neurochemicals that you're getting are still supporting that. Cognitively, again, we talked about all of these neurochemicals are ones that boost that creativity, that innovation, the finding the lateral thinking, nonlinear thinking. We start to see collaboration being easier because we can see other people's point of view, which runs right into our mental benefits of openness and vulnerability. And then norepinephrine for the reduction of stress. And then most of these just kind of just give you joy. Don't even have to find it. So those are our benefits. So play is beneficial. So you may be thinking, okay, some of you may have written something down and you're going, maybe that wasn't actually play after all, which is completely normal, again, for adults, because it's really hard for adults to figure out what's play for them. And I want to point out now that you have not yet heard me say the word fun or games. So play is not just fun and games. Jervis did. You've heard me talk on that before. Play is all of those things we talked about, those other 10 characteristics, but it does not have to be fun by sort of like societal standards of just have fun. And having fun and playing, it's starting to get a little press. We're starting to see there's a Newsweek article a month or 2 ago about it. Like people are writing books about this, have more fun. But the word fun is really hard because our prefrontal cortex is in the way. And this is for adults, it's a well-matured part of our brain. Kids can go out and have fun anytime they want with anything because their prefrontal cortex is not mucking things up. But we have to like get past that. So what I present to you now, I hope will help you figure out more ways to play for yourself. So throw out the word fun. Play might be a game for you, but it doesn't have to be. And consider the definition of playfulness. This comes from Renee Proyer. He's a scientist in the area of personality traits. And this is his definition of the ability to reframe any situation to be interesting, entertaining, and or stimulating. This means we can take this concept, a mindset shift, a language shift, and apply it to chores. You don't need a magic hour anymore because you can put this into anything you do during the day. Yes.
I've actually, that was what I was tapping into when I started doing TikToks for my law firm. And I even call it infotainment. Like, yeah, I take the trends and I turn them into something that has to do with the area of one. And it's just funny. And it also shows what I do and my personality. I do some of the boring, like, things that
right.
You're talking about concepts, but
they're interesting.
And I think people it's still playful. They still know that I have that other side to it, just it's still approachable. And it's just tapped into a creative side of me that feels good. And then I also bring that to my work because I'm having ingrained in me like the fun of the creative aspect I'm bringing. And yeah, I don't know. And what I do, it can burn someone out easy. So I think incorporating that into it has been really practice. Victim rights law. So,
so heavy.
I was a DA before that, so just seeing people do horrible things to each other, but finding a way to, make it hopeful and interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's what I was going to say. I was wondering if you applied this to what you were talking about earlier, like being in court. I guarantee you, there's a lot of people going, sorry, you get into flow in court? But for you, and this is a really impressive thing, if being the attorney in a court in front of a judge in really heavy situations, if you can turn that into something playful, that's life-changing. I would always make a point to make everyone laugh at once. Just to loosen it up. Like you have to loosen it up. I love it. So consider this for yourself and where you can apply that in your life. And she's given us a great inspiration because she can do it in court for victims' rights. You guys can do it for doing the dishes, right? So coming back to our imposter phenomenon, Rene Proyer, the scientist who gave us that lovely definition, and his another scientist, Kay Brower. If you want to scan this goes to their research study that found that individuals with playful personalities have a built-in internal resilience to the imposter phenomenon. So full-on white paper, actual scientific study. Rene Proyer is responsible for coming up with, they're called 4 personal play identities. Do I want to here? I do a little bit. You don't want to read that. We have 4 minutes. Okay, so I will send you something with all of these on them. These are 4 different types of playful personalities. The one that most people think is playful is lighthearted, but intellectual, Jervis, you can play with a spreadsheet. That's a real thing. So we'll go into all this, but in the study, they delineate other directed playful personality has this type of resilience, and this is why. And so people with, playful adults were already utilizing healthy coping strategies for a lot of situations. And so we're building adaptivity and resilience and flexibility. And we know from the flow cycle that we're also taking that play skills and making our recovery stage a much more beneficial thing for us. We're actually using the recovery time. And so the adaptivity and the resilience and the flexibility are the exact skills that we need to combat that rigid thinking and open that brain back up. So this is going to be hard because society, toxic capitalism, everything out there is telling us, no, there's no time for play. You are adults. Climb the stairs, do harder, do better, work harder. But I heard you, don't do it. Don't let them bully you. Play instead, be playful. So just remembering your 4 stages of play, where it lives, that's where the imposter phenomenon, and that scientifically playful personalities are more likely to be resilient to the feelings of being an imposter. Yes, CJ.
Doing digital marketing, I'm always dealing with a process, and I'm sedentary and what have you. One of the balances I've found, and I guess I'm looking for confirmation on this, is doing things that provide instant gratification, like vacuuming, washing windows, doing the dishes, which you mentioned. And for some reason, I get satisfaction out of that.
So not everybody will. I would never. Absolutely not what I would choose. But it's personal, right? Remember? So if that's what brings you a boost of joy in that moment, maybe for what a lot of people like to gamify that doesn't work for my brain. But if that's what works for you, then absolutely.
I think the key word would be instant gratification. Not necessarily what you're doing, but
right. Yeah. So if you see that it's this, then it's play. And that the activity literally does not matter. Yeah. So
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. This QR code, if you'll do a quick, because they've got one for GBC, but this one is for me. And if you'll give me a little bit of feedback, it shouldn't take long. It's like 4 things of stars and a couple boxes, and you don't have to fill those in if you don't want to, but you'll get access to the personal play identities that we talked about. You'll get access to a little mini exercise and you can walk through and see what you think your identity might be.
Guys, thank you so much.